Oops. Hi, everybody. I'm Skip Alzheimer. Welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime Streaming Show, where we watch old 16mm films. And that was a home movie that was shot in a visit to the Andes. A lot of great shots there. And somebody pointed out that they thought it might be a professional who's kind of doing a take with putting his hand in front of the camera. That's totally possible. There's a lot of professionals who would go on these vacations and these trips, and they would document what they saw, and then might edit it, or they might sell the footage to an educational film company or a documentary, or whatever. So there was that kind of prosumer, professional / consumer. Anyways, some pretty cool footage. Unfortunately, we have no idea when that was shot, so we didn't have any information on the can. We can sometimes look at the film to tell us, like, roughly when the film was made, like the actual film stock, but it's hard to tell from there. It's still kind of a wide guesstimate. Anyways, so next film we got set up is, I believe this is a Moody Institute of Science film. And it's not a film about science. It's about geography, which I guess you could call a science. But I haven't seen this, and I'm kind of interested to see where God comes in. I mean, to be honest. As all the Moody Institutes of Science films do mention God, or the Creator. So let's see if he shows up. All right, enjoy.
A model such as this might be thought of as a giant relief map area. Seen from above, the model looks like an aerial view of the real thing, doesn't it? Looks like a lake. See the islands in the lake? See the airport and the roads? What else do you see that you recognize? Trees, streams. It's the same thing. It's a dam. Only this is a symbol for a dam, the way it appears on a map. Symbols are the picture language of maps. A dam, a river, a bridge, a road, and a school. The map maker uses these symbols to give us information. Some symbols are easy to recognize because they look like what they represent. Other symbols have to be memorized, like this one showing the direction for north. We need to know directions to know where we are, to become oriented. This symbol tells about distance. We call this the scale for a mile. The more you know about the symbols of a map, the more useful the map becomes to you. If we take away the symbols for the man-made objects, a map can still tell us a lot about where we are and what we will see if we explore. You will notice that the lines in nature are very seldom straight lines, nor are the shapes regular shapes. Each turn of the river is a little different. Each tree has a slightly different form. The edges of the forests and the ridges and the valleys are rough and irregular. Here we can see what the poet means when he speaks of the river winding its way to the sea. So when you see an irregular line on a model or a map, it often symbolizes a dividing line drawn by nature and then traced by the map maker. One of the most common of such lines is the dividing line between the land and the sea. We call such a dividing line a shoreline or a coastline. From here, a coastline would be easy to find, wouldn't it? That's right, it's the place where the land and the water meet. But how about this drawing? If the shoreline is here and here, how would we show it on a map? Seen from above, a shoreline looks pretty flat. Even so, it's easy to tell the land from the water, isn't it? The colors are different. And since the water looks blue, let's use blue for the water in our drawing. A make-believe line called the datum plane separates the water below from the land above. Let's color the land brown. We are adding to our picture symbols color symbols, and on a map they look like this. To tell how deep the water is and how high the land is, let's add to the color symbols line symbols called contours or contour lines. Contour lines are drawn at even intervals, here every 10 feet below the water and every 10 feet above. For the deepest part of the water, let's use a dark blue. This color will represent water 20 to 30 feet deep. From 0 to 10 and from 10 to 20, let's use lighter shades of blue. On our map, they will look like this. For the highest layer of land, a light brown is used, and the brown gets darker as it gets closer to the water. A map using colors and contours looks like this. Even without the numbers, if you understand the symbols, you can quickly tell where the water is deepest and the land highest. Downhill, uphill, and where the contour lines are closer together, the hill is steeper. And this is a good thing to know because looks can be deceiving. Even on the model, this doesn't look like much of a hike, does it? But what appears to be flat is actually rough and uneven. Without contour lines or color symbols, you might not know that in order to make this walk, you'd have some climbing to do, up one hill and down another, at the bottom of which is a stream with no bridge. You'd have to wade the stream and then climb an even steeper hill on the other side. What looked like a short walk might take a long time, especially if half of it is uphill and the other half down. What about the towns and cities where so many of us live? Have you ever been up in a helicopter where you could look down and see the houses and other buildings below? If you were going to make a map, how would you show a heavily populated area such as this? It would all depend on how big the map was, wouldn't it? And how much we wanted to show. If we were making a model or a giant relief map, we could show our town like this. The symbols would look very much like what they stood for. This would be known as a large-scale map. In other words, the map is large enough and the area shown is small enough to allow the symbols to look like what they stand for. But not all maps are like this, nor do they need to be. We may be interested in a larger area. If so, the scale for our map must become smaller. It becomes less important for the houses and buildings to look so much like what they are. We may be more interested in the streets and the highways approaching the town. Or we may be interested in the land that surrounds the town. You will notice that the more of the area shown, the less like a town our symbol becomes. On maps that show very large areas, a town, even a city, may be shown by just a small dot. Now we see that a small amount of the map represents a lot of territory. Therefore, we say it is a small-scale map. But now suppose we were not interested in the towns, but in the rainfall of the United States. The map maker could very easily give us such information by simply adding to his map what we call a legend. A legend tells us what sign language is used by the person making the map to give us special information. If you were moving from one part of the United States to another, and you wanted to know about the rainfall in the area of your new home, a map such as this could tell you what to expect. In these areas, you could expect lots of rain. Lawns and trees and flowers would be plentiful. But how about here? Very little rain. You would be moving to a desert country. A map can also tell us about temperature, elevation, prevailing winds. Almost anything can be told with maps by the use of symbols. Even about crops, transportation, industry, and people. It all depends on what the map maker wants to say. So the next time you look at a map, see how much more it tells you when you learn what the symbols stand for, when you learn the picture language of the map maker's story concerning that part of the earth he is trying to represent.
So I was totally wrong. That's not Moody Institute of Science, although I think that's the same narrator that shows up in some of the later Moody Institute of Science films. That was Encyclopedia Britannica, and someone commented that he had, the narrator had really good diction and everything was clear until he hit the word interesting, and it was interesting. So that was... I'm going to see if I can find a Moody film that has who I think is the same narrator. But in the meantime, so yesterday we watched a bunch of Harryhausen stop-motion animation films, and some of them were not correct, and I actually was missing one. So I found Hansel and Gretel, and I found Rapunzel, so we're going to go ahead and watch those. Enjoy.
Once upon a time, long ago, there was a poor, tired woodcutter who lived near the edge of a great forest. He had 2 children, a boy who was named Hansel and a little girl named Gretel. Although there was very little in the house to eat, Hansel and Gretel were happy children, for they were busy each day, keeping their father's house orderly and clean. For the woodcutter. Often all the food he could bring home for their supper was a little stale bread and a half pitcher of milk. He was so worried as it was barely enough to keep his children from starving. To become of us, cried the poor woodcutter. Our last bit of food gone. Hansel knew that Gretel had not intended to break the pitcher nor spill the milk, and tried to comfort her. But he knew too how worried his father was and wanted to help him in some way. With the half loaf of stale bread under his arm, he took Gretel to the front porch, where he wanted to tell her about his plan to get food for their supper. We shall go into the forest and fill our basket with nice ripe berries, said Hansel. But Gretel was afraid. She thought they might get lost without their father. Hansel finally persuaded her to follow him, and the two children set out on their journey through the wood. Finally, Hansel began to break off pieces of bread and drop them along the path. See, Gretel, said Hansel, when our basket is filled with berries, we shall follow the trail of breadcrumbs back to our house. The children walked deeper and deeper into the dense forest, searching for berries. It was getting late, and their basket was still empty. Gretel wanted to start for home, but when they looked for the breadcrumbs, they were gone. Don't be afraid, said Hansel. In the morning, we shall find our way home, somehow. Hansel and Gretel did not see the ugly green witch, but she saw them. Every living thing in the forest was afraid of the old witch, as it was said that she possessed strange magic powers. What a beautiful gingerbread house it was for two hungry children to find in the lonesome forest. Hansel thought it strange that they hadn't noticed it before. The roof was made of ginger snaps, the chimney of blocks of taffy candy, and the sides were covered with frosted cookies. They were just about to eat the candy windowsill when they heard a voice say, "Nibble, nibble, little mouse, who is nibbling at my house?" "Oh, you poor hungry children," the old woman said in a very cheerful voice. "I'm so glad you like my gingerbread house." Then she said in a more kindly voice than before, come inside, and I will give you something very nice to eat." Though the old witch was ugly and her face wrinkled and green, she spoke so pleasantly that the children trusted her. Hansel and Gretel were so very hungry, and there before them was a feast good enough for a king. The witch's table was spread with candies, puddings, sodas, and ice cream. Many more wonderful things than they had ever had at home. Suddenly, the old witch seized Hansel by the collar and jerked him out of his chair. And before he knew it, he found himself locked in a golden cage. Then she said to poor little Gretel, "Now you, child, put more wood on the fire. Go do as I say. We are going to bake gingerbread today." Gretel was very frightened, for she now understood what the old witch was planning to do. Poor Hansel was going to be baked into a gingerbread boy. "Now, child, test the oven and see if it is hot enough," said the old witch. Gretel pretended not to know how to test the oven. "Oh, you stupid girl," said the angry old witch. "I will do it myself." Gretel thought of poor Hansel locked in the cage, and she knew what she must do. When the witch was destroyed, the enchantment of the gingerbread house was broken, and Hansel and Gretel were free. Because of Gretel's brave deed, the entire forest was now free of the witch's evil spell. The animals sent a quick-footed white rabbit to tell Hansel and Gretel how happy and how grateful they were, and to show them where the old witch had hidden her treasure chest of gold and silver and precious jewels. The woodcutter had been looking for his lost children and had almost given up hope when he found their basket. What a happy little family they were to be all together again. Now, with the wonderful treasure chest full of gold and jewels, they need never go hungry again. And they lived happily ever after.
So there was no stepmother there. Yesterday, the Japanese animated version had a stepmother who basically kicked the kids out. They came back, and then she kicked them out again. Oh, here's Rapunzel.
Once upon a time, very long ago, there lived a beautiful young girl in a high tower. Her name was Rapunzel, and she had long, beautiful yellow hair, as fine as spun gold. The witch had taken Rapunzel from her mother and father because they had stolen the witch's radishes. And now the old woman had locked Rapunzel in a lonely tower that had no doors and only one window at the very top. Each day when the witch came to visit the young girl, she took great care to be sure that no one would see her. Then she would call, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Rapunzel had to do as she was told, and soon her hair would ripple down over the windowsill like a gleaming golden waterfall. Then the old witch would cast a magic spell, and Rapunzel's hair would form into braids all by itself. The silken braids made a long golden rope for the old witch to climb. The old woman was very jealous of Rapunzel's beauty. Each day she would sit for hours watching her. They lived this way for several years, until one day a prince walking along the mountain path chanced to see the tower. He was surprised to find a tower in such a lonely place. Wanting to enter, he looked about for a door, but found there was none. Never before had he seen such a strange building with no possible way to enter. Just then the old witch came hobbling up the path. The prince had heard of the old woman who had magic powers. He did not want her to see him until he knew just what she was up to. The old woman did not see the prince, and she called as usual, "Rapunzel! Rapunzel, let down your hair!" And once again, Rapunzel's long yellow hair would ripple like a golden waterfall down the side of the tower. The prince had never before seen such beautiful hair and such a lovely face. And again the witch would cast her magic spell. So that is how one enters the tower, thought the prince. And he waited for hours for the old witch to leave so that he could speak to the beautiful girl with the long golden hair. When the prince was sure that the old witch had gone, he called just as the witch had done. "Rapunzel! Rapunzel, let down your hair!" Rapunzel, thinking the old witch wished to climb back into the tower, lowered her braided hair once again. Rapunzel was afraid of the prince, for she had never seen a young man before. But he was so kind and courteous that she soon forgot her fear. And now that the prince saw Rapunzel quite closely, she was even more beautiful than he had thought. And when he knelt and gallantly kissed her hand, it made Rapunzel very happy. The prince promised to return the following day and free her from her prison tower. The next day, the witch came to the tower at the usual time. Rapunzel absent-mindedly said to the witch, "How is it that you take so long to climb up to the window while the prince climbs so swiftly?" Then she realized what she had said. "Oh, you wicked girl," cried the old witch. "I thought I had you safely hidden from everyone. Oh, how you have deceived me." And in a fit of anger, she seized a pair of scissors and cut off those long, wonderful golden braids. Just then, the prince arrived at the foot of the tower. He called, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." So, thought the old witch, he has come back for her. And in her wicked mind, she planned to cast a magic spell upon the gallant prince and blind him so he could never again see Rapunzel. The poor prince escaped with his life, but the witch's curse left him blind and helpless. He sadly wandered off into the mountains, knowing that he could never look into the beautiful eyes of Rapunzel again. To punish Rapunzel for deceiving her and attempting to run away, the hard-hearted old witch took her to a far-away desert and left her there, with only bare rocks and a crude log shelter to protect her from the wind and the sun. The girl pleaded with the witch to take her back to the tower, but the ugly old woman had a heart of stone and would not listen. For many months, Rapunzel lived alone in the desert, with nothing to eat but the roots of desert plants. Until one day, the blind prince, who had been searching all over the land, chanced upon the very spot where his beloved Rapunzel was living. When she saw her gallant prince was blind, she wept. A large tear fell upon his eyes. It broke the witch's evil spell, and happily the prince once more could see his beautiful Rapunzel. The prince was sad to see her beautiful golden hair so short. But now that the magic spell was broken, when he touched her hair, it began to grow longer and longer until its wavy strands glistened again in the sunlight. The prince then took his beloved Rapunzel back to his castle, where they had a royal wedding, and they lived happily ever after.
I don't know that story well enough to know how much that varies from the narrative, if it does at all. I mean, I know about the hair, Rapunzel, put down your hair, all that stuff, but yeah. Thank you, Kevin, for the coffee. One way you can support AV Geeks is by going to ko-fi.com/AVGeeks, and you can buy us coffee. I should say that the homeschooler kids, they also gave me money for coffee. And I was very excited. I was like, wow, they didn't need to do that. Like, they've been sending me all these drawings and letters, and I looked, and it's basically, it is Emerald City currency. There's the Wicked Witch. And they're bricks. It must represent gold bricks of the yellow brick road. And somebody told me once that L. Frank Baum wrote about the yellow brick road as like, this is the gold standard. You know, our government's it's built everything on the gold standard. But I don't know if that's true. They also did give me a little bit of house blend coffee in a pod. Unfortunately, I don't have Keurig. What else did they give me? A little showcase of different things here. So they gave me 2 shirts, which I will not wear because I don't want to get them dirty. This is me with really hairy arms. And there's a little stool with lasagna on it in the corner. And then on this side, so basically what it did is there's 4 kids and each one did a side of a shirt. And so this one, I was like, what is this? And it features all of you. All of you that, or most of you, some of you. So there's Sean Moore, Chuck Rawlings, Taryn Tots, Have a Ham, there's me, Sonic is there, WB Wolf, let's see, Old Radios, and I can't read, Burrow Owl. Yeah. So you guys get a shout out on my shirt. Then Sarah, that last one was Peter. Sarah did a lunchtime streaming show with a beautiful thing of lasagna, flanked by reels of film and me. And then on this side, Athena, or Kitka, as she likes to be called, big fan, I guess, of Star Trek. And so she drew the Star Trek animated series, and then the Admiral of 16mm films is me. And I'm wearing a yellow shirt, not a red shirt, which is good. So there's more to be seen. I love it. Anyways, let's learn about the calendar.
Just suppose that by magic we could slow down or speed. Yes, this is a trick. We usually observe events in a more natural rate of time. Have you ever noticed how long a time it takes for day to become night? It takes a much longer time for the seasons to change. Here is a length of time everyone knows. The time from one birthday to the next.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Jimmy. Happy birthday to you.
Today is Jimmy's birthday. Jimmy and his classmates have fun celebrating special days like birthdays. Jimmy's birthday is in the month of March. March is the month when spring begins. Susan's birthday is in July. July is a month in which we all celebrate a special holiday. Johnny's birthday comes on the last day of the year. There is a holiday in the month of December, too. It's fun to plan ahead and look for special days, but how do we know when to expect days like birthdays and holidays? To keep a record of days, we use a calendar.
A calendar helps us measure and count days, weeks, months, and years. But how long is a day, a month, or a year? To find out, we have to measure time. This clock measures time in seconds, minutes, and hours. Can you think of a way to measure longer periods of time? What period of time do we measure by the sun? With this clock, we can measure days. If we count each day and give it a number, we can keep a record of time. This record of time is what we call a calendar. But where did our calendar, or record of time, come from? The idea of keeping a record of time started long ago, even before history began. Long ago, early man had a simple way of telling time. He watched the setting and rising sun. As early man counted days by the sun, he began to keep a record of days. This is how the first calendar began. In order to keep a record of many days, a way was needed to measure longer periods of time. As he watched the changing phases of the moon, early man began to count the number of days in a moon cycle. In this way, man began to keep a record of these regular changes or cycles of the moon. The moon cycle or month was a good way to measure longer periods of time. Then an even longer period of time was discovered. Far off in ancient Egypt, people noticed that the seasons changed regularly. By keeping a record of the changing seasons, people found a way to measure the period of time that we call a year. Then the early Egyptians found a way to measure a year accurately. They noticed that a shadow cast by the sun moved in a regular cycle throughout the year. By observing one complete cycle of the shadow, the early Egyptians were able to measure a year by the sun. Today we know that one complete journey of our Earth around the sun measures the period of time we call a year. Each journey of our Earth around the sun takes a little more than 365 days, with a small part of one day left over. This means that each cycle of 365 days of our Earth traveling around the sun measures a year. But what do we do with the part of a day left over at the end of each year? Since we count only 365 days in a year, our calendar is short part of one day each year. In 4 years, these parts of days add up to one whole day. Our calendar becomes short one day every 4 years. Do you know how we make up for this day? Once every 4 years, we add a day to the month of February. We call years with an extra day leap years. Because the calendar helps us plan many of the things we do, we should know how to use it correctly. What do we do when we write a calendar date? First, we write the month, then the number of the day of the month, and finally, the year. But what does this number do? The number of the year helps us count years. In this way, we can count the number of years from one event to another over long periods of time. Sometimes a date in the calendar helps to remind us of something we are planning to do. This is how the calendar helps Susan remember her appointment with the dentist. And this is how Donald uses a calendar to help him remember when to put money in his bank. Dates in the calendar can be useful in many ways. Our newspapers have a calendar date on them. This date helps us to know when things happen. The post office uses a calendar date on our mail. This date shows us when a letter was mailed. Libraries use calendar dates too. Each time we borrow a book from the library, a date in the calendar helps us remember when the book must be returned. By using a calendar, we can plan ahead for the changing seasons. In what ways do you have fun during these months? What happens at this time of year? What do you like to do during these months? Do you see how the cycle of the changing months leads to a new year? The changing seasons are important to many people, such as farmers. Farmers often use a calendar to know when to plant and when to harvest. The calendar helps farmers to plan ahead. The calendar helps us plan for holidays, too. Do you know why we celebrate this holiday? What happens on this date? By using the calendar, we can keep track of all the days that are important to us. Our calendar is a record of time, divided into days, weeks, months, and years. It helps us to keep a record of many important events and to plan ahead for the things we do. What are some of the ways the calendar helps you plan the things you do?
All right. A little splicey. That happens. So what do we got? What do I got set up here? Language maps. All right. We'll go a little bit over. This was requested by one of the kids, and they were looking for more Clyde Beatty footage, and I feel like Clyde Beatty's in this. So Clyde Beatty, of course, was a lion tamer. So this will be some potentially regrettable footage of animals being tamed. Enjoy.
Deep in the lush, tangled, wild land of Africa, intrepid adventurers follow native guides as they hunt the untamed predatory beasts of the jungle. This is an expedition to bring them back alive. To this jungle of fury and violence, men come to pit their courage and cunning against the most dangerous animals in the world. The threat of death is ever present, whether it's on the ground or from the treetops, and the law of the jungle is kill or be killed. In settings like this, centuries of animal adaptation are put to the test. Each animal, in its own way, has developed weapons that will enable it to survive. The thick skin, the saber teeth, the pounce, the fleet legs. The perfection of these abilities spell the difference between survival and extinction. To the free-roaming jungle tenants, man is an enemy to be avoided at any cost, and the explorer must be as wily and daring as the beast he hunts. The prowl for food is the daily routine for the meat-eaters. There are the days of plenty and the periods of scarcity, but the search for food remains the most basic activity of the jungle world. A hungry tiger is afraid of nothing. The sluggish crocodile-infested waters are no obstacle in his quest for food. His killer instinct knows no fear as he claws at the armor-like hide of this massive man-eater. It's a drama old as the ages. In water, on land, in the air, beast fights beast, and to the victor belongs another day of existence. Proud and mighty, the lion roams the jungle, master of all he surveys. Through the jungle, a warning is sounded. The king is on the prowl, and he's hungry. Suddenly, the tangled forest is still, and all living things wait with bated breath. Killer hunts killer, as these two powerful enemies get wind of each other and slowly come together for the showdown. And the fight is on. Here are the forces of nature in perfect balance, two opponents with equal strength, skill, and tools of destruction. It is a mighty battle that shakes the forest with its violence. The raging beasts do not sense the approach of the stalking safari. This is man, their most dangerous enemy. And for this safari, it is the most ticklish job of all, to bring the jungle killers back alive. It will take human cunning that has had long training in the ways of the jungle. Trapping the powerful and clever jungle cats is a dangerous and difficult job. These beasts, free in their native jungle, are alert, always watchful, wary of the slightest change. Nets and traps must be concealed so that no suspicion is aroused. One mistake can mean a life. With the traps set, the hunters retreat for the vigil of waiting. Getting one of these wary animals into a cage is a duel of wits. But it's a well-laid trap, and the tiger, although suspicious, is heading for the nets. And he's caught. There's more than one way to skin a cat, and there's more than one way to catch him, too. Here, a goat serves as bait to tempt a lion. A yank of the rope, and the trap is shut. The unsuspecting victim this time is a hyena, and he's caught with another variation of the rope trick. But after the hunt, the triumphant party returns with the prizes. The long trip back to civilization begins as the bewildered prisoners stare balefully from their cages, unaware that before long, they'll be thrilling millions of people by their grace and ferocity. But can they forget? Can their age-old instincts die in the new way of life? Or will they still feel the call of the jungle? An irresistible call that torments them and leaves no peace. This now becomes the question that spells new life or slow death. For these caged animals, the test of their ability to adapt to new surroundings is about to begin. This group is headed for a circus. There was a lot more room back where they came from. Here in their crowded cages, the beasts struggle vainly against their captivity. Kicking, biting, growling, they fight through the difficult process of adjusting to their new life. There are all kinds of ways to bring about peace and harmony, and there's nothing like a good dousing to settle a family quarrel, as man shows his superiority over the jungle cunning of these untamed brutes. Once the mighty cats begin to understand, they're smart as a whip. That is, smart as the trainer's whip. Of course, if you get them young enough, why, they're just like a bunch of adorable kittens. And here's a tough hombre who shows them who's boss. Yes, they look adorable, and they know their master, but even these youngsters have the instinctive heritage of their jungle freedom, and all they want is a chance, one chance, to gain the upper hand. Everyone remembers the thrill of the first trip to the circus. With grace and beauty, the big cats go through their paces after months of arduous training. Slowly, their jungle days slip into the past. Old feuds forgotten. The fierce beasts work side by side, performing like real troopers, while the gallery shouts its approval. But danger is ever present, and that's the thrill that grips the spectators. The trainer can't afford a mistake, because the jungle is still there, lurking, waiting. Remember, they're still dangerous. Here's a touch the king of the jungle never dreamed of as he stalked the home ground in the wilds of Africa. Hey, keep that soap out of my eyes, will you? They may be docile under the expert's touch, but we don't advise you to try it. You can lead a lion to water, but he will never like it. Now here is a lady who has no use for lap dogs, not when she can romp with this charming little kitten. It's great fun as long as beauty can charm the beast. The big sissies had enough, imagine. Yes, the things that can be done with these tough, dangerous animals with care and understanding is truly remarkable. They can be domesticated, but do they like it? Are they better off away from the struggle for survival in the jungle, or is freedom with all its perils more to their liking? In any case, the proud, graceful jungle prowlers will always present an intriguing challenge to man's spirit of adventure.
There was no Clyde Beatty there. Sometimes I get misinformation. I thought for sure, based on my notes, that Clyde would have shown up. One of the kids thinks I look like Clyde Beatty, so, and also one of the kids thinks I look like their uncle. So there you go. Anyways, thanks for tuning in today. Very much appreciate it. We'll be back again tomorrow. Tomorrow's Thursday, right? Thanks so much for your comments. I saw some new faces and very much like new faces. One way you can do that is by hitting the thumbs up button or the like button. That tells the algorithms to potentially share this with other people. And so all of you that have done this in the past, please do it again. We'll be back, like I said, tomorrow, and everybody have a great rest of your day, and we will talk to you soon. Take care.